all nations will be united under one authority. All ethnicity and religious division will be eradicated. And the political rulership system has three components. And they're all singing in happy unison right now. All together now. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to talk about all together now. 1, 2, 3. Now there's a reason for that title, because we're going to talk about threes. After all, there are three persons in the Godhood, and there are three counterfeits in the system that the adversary has set up on this earth. And then there are other components of three wrapped up in this issue. Now before I start, I just briefly want to just give a few slides to recap the story of the papal visit in Washington. When Pope Francis addressed both houses in the Capitol, he referred to Moses and he referred to the law of Moses. But this is the relief that you find in the Capitol building. And it's interesting that it is surrounded by the laurel wreath. Now the laurel wreath, of course, is the symbol of Caesar. He was always crowned with a laurel wreath. So could this be that the law of Moses that he is referring to is encapsulated in Roman Decretalia? It's of course not the only relief that we find there. We also find a similar one of Hammurabi, who gave us the first coded law, well not the first, but one of the first, on this mighty stela that he erected, where there were civil laws as well as other laws, and it also is surrounded by the laurel wreath. So Babylonian law is perhaps mingled with Mosaic law. And then we also have a relief of Pope Innocent, also in the laurel wreath. And so we have perhaps a mixture of the biblical law with the Babylonian law, with the papal law, all encapsulated by Rome. Now when the Pope was in Washington, it is fascinating that he followed the same procedure as any incoming president would. His first visit was to the White House. From the White House, they then progressed to the Capitol. And there he addressed both houses, and he gave this fascinating speech. And in the speech, he used various people, and I believe that the stories that he used were to highlight a certain philosophy that was central to his theme. Just as any incoming president, after his address, he would then go to the doors to greet the people and address the nation. But he went one higher. He went up to the balcony. So in a sense, he became the unofficial higher president of the United States. And thereafter, he went to, well, the United Nations. And we'll talk about that in a second. Now, when Herod the Great built the temple in Jerusalem, he also, at the entrance, placed this Roman eagle. In other words, what he did, because he got his power from Rome, he dedicated the temple to Caesar. Now the question is, can the temple of God be dedicated to Caesar, or should it be dedicated to God? And so the Roman zealots were very upset about this, and one night they snuck over to the temple and they obliterated this emblem of Roman oppression. And Herod was not too pleased at this event. He had them dragged physically to his abode, and there he had them tortured to death. You see, you don't mess with Rome. And I'm wondering if the symbols that we have just seen were actually far greater than even this symbol, because the law of God, the Babylonian law, and the papal law are all encapsulated by this laurel wreath, suggesting that Rome is the one who will determine in which format these laws will be fused into one. In his speech, he referred to some interesting characters. And one is surprised that he used these personages, because he himself, being a Jesuit, referred to Abraham Lincoln, who was never a friend of Jesuits, and wrote it quite clearly in his writings and warned against these people, whom he regarded as one of the greatest dangers for the new nation. But the speech was brilliantly choreographed. And I believed he used these personages not because of their relationship to the United States per se, but for a greater reality. He was setting the tone for the new world order. And that is why he drove around in a little Fiat, so that everyone would assume that he was so humble. When the word fiat, of course, means to rule with absolute authority. And it was another one of those symbols. And I gave this lecture before, so that's not my point. This is just an introduction. Why did he use Abraham Lincoln? Well, Lincoln was the one who united the states and made one conglomerate under one leadership. So what he intended was to bring the message that the states of the world would be united under one authority. And then he referred to Thomas Merton. And what was his claim to fame? His claim to fame was that he wanted to incorporate all the religious systems of the world. So by using him as an example of a great American hero, he was actually saying our aim is to unite all religions. The next one he referred to was Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King, of course, was the one who said that he had a dream. And that dream was that there would be racial equality on all levels. And this would be also part and parcel of the New World Order. The divide between ethnic differences would be eliminated. Not that I'm making a value judgment, I'm just making an observation. The final one that was rather fascinating was that of Doris Day, who, by the way, in the Roman Catholic system is well on her way to sainthood, as she will be canonized, even though she was a lady with a rather colorful past. She had more than one marriage. Apparently, she also had an abortion, and she had all kinds of strange manifestations. But that is not the point. What was it that he wanted to highlight? She stood for redistribution of wealth. In other words, if I get the message right, he was saying all nations will be united under one authority. All ethnicity and religious division will be eradicated, and there will be a redistribution of wealth. After his speech, he went into the foyer, where he went to the statue of Saint Junipera Serra. And this was the Catholic missionary who had introduced Catholicism into California and had used the Indian population almost like the reduction systems in the South had been used by the Jesuits in order to build up Catholicism in the nation. In other words, the nation would once again serve the Roman system. And that's rather a powerful message. And since then, a number of things have happened. Number one, he declared 2016 as the year of mercy. And as I explained before, the papal system embodies the aspect of mercy, not God, the papal system. Because according to them, God had handed over this theology, if you like, to the papal system. When you die, you are still responsible for the sins that you have committed, even if they are forgiven, and therefore you will go to a place called purgatory. And the only way to get out of purgatory is if the papacy makes use of the treasury of merit in order to transfer merit through mercy to someone in purgatory so that it can be released from the penalty of forgiven sins. And of course that is not biblical at all, and the reformers were very adamant about that position, and this is where the whole Reformation began, with Martin Luther nailing his thesis against the wall saying you cannot buy salvation and the papacy doesn't have the power to disseminate mercy. So I'm fascinated that the year 2016 is the year of mercy. And I'm wondering if next year then, 2017, will be the year of non-mercy. And I find that rather interesting. Subsequently, he went to the United Nations, and we see again that the United Nations emblem is encapsulated in the laurel wreath, and it is subject to Rome. And he became the first pope to address this illustrious body and the leaders of the world. Now you will say to me, excuse me, there have been many popes that have addressed the United Nations, including his predecessor, and the one before that, so where do I get that idea from? Yes, there have been popes who have spoken at the United Nations, but never to the leaders. Only to the ambassadors of the various nations. But this being the celebration of the 17th year of the United Nations, all the leaders of the world were there, and thus after having symbolically been inaugurated as the supreme president in the Capitol, which, by the way, is his temple, and as the representative of Osiris, he had stood on the balcony to greet his people. It was only fitting that he should go there and inform the nations that they had a document to deal with that November that had to be signed in Paris. Well, there was quite a bit of turmoil in Paris. Some claim it was a false flag, some claim it was not a false flag. Howbeit, the nations came and they signed away their sovereignty on these issues and made it subject to a world authority. So where is this heading? And the historic events that have happened since then, are they merely chance? Are they glitches on the pages of history? Or is there a plan as we look at the events? So how are we going to put the system together? And how are we all going to come together? 1, 2, 3. Well, let's start with Genesis. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm not making a value judgment. I'm not saying whether this or that system or lifestyle is right or wrong or whatever. I'm just making an observation. That's all. Genesis 1:27, so God created man in his own image, in the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. So God had created the male and female, and he had given them dominion. Now he also had a covenant with them, and the covenant was between God and the man. The woman being part of his body, one with his flesh, was automatically incorporated, but God set a hierarchy in place nevertheless. Before Eve was even created, God made his covenant with Adam. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayst freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. This covenant and this prohibition was obviously communicated also to Eve. And after the flood, we read, Noah went forth, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with them. So redemption incorporates both sexes, of course, because the two shall be one. But when it comes to the covenant, it is made with the man. We read in Genesis 9 verse 1, and God blessed Noah and his sons. Now, he didn't forget about the wives there, because he mentioned them previously, as Randy Skeet also says in one of his lectures, and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Isn't that the same that he did with Adam? And God spoke unto Noah and his sons with him, saying, and behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you. So God didn't change his mind after the fall of Adam and Eve. He didn't change the hierarchy. God set a hierarchy in place. And this hierarchy and this covenant is something that is divinely instituted. Now my question is, if you were the enemy of God, would you not want to put the order that God had put in place into jeopardy and perhaps reverse the order? Wouldn't that be something that would be up his sleeves? Wanting to undo everything that God had put in place? So how far are we in the world's governmental systems of having turned the covenants upside down? So there was a particular hierarchy in heaven. The man was at the leadership position, the woman, and then the children. Because the fifth commandment says, honor thy father and thy mother. Now if we look at the modern systems, we find a fascinating reversal. 1 Corinthians 11:3, but I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. Is there a hierarchy in heaven, yes or no? And the answer is, the Bible says yes. Even in heaven there's a hierarchy. There is God, Christ, who is in every essence what God is, archangels, and then various different classes of angels. There's a hierarchy. And so there's a hierarchy on earth as well. Now, does this make the woman inferior in any way? Absolutely not. And after the fall, which one got the more important job, the man or the woman? The woman got the more important job. The man had to go and work in the field by the sweat of his brow and to make sure there was food on the table. But the woman got the important task of raising children in the image of God. Character development, patience, kindness, attributes that are superbly fitted to the woman. Not that the man can't do it, or that a woman cannot do what a man can do. If I think of the war years, who took care of industry? Who ran the heavy machinery? Who did the welding? Who did the fixing? Who did the building? Wasn't it the women? Absolutely. It's not that a woman cannot do it. It's just that God had set a particular hierarchy in place, and that is just the way it is. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. They are a unit. And one isn't inferior or superior, but the one is subject to the other. Wives, you are subject to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. And love is not self-seeking. It does not lord it over anyone. It is kind. It is, all those attributes of that Paul mentions in Corinthians. And then in Genesis chapter 2, verse 2, and on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. That's the structure of the covenant and the hierarchical structure that was set up in Eden. And I assume that the enemy is not too pleased with any of it and would like to reverse it entirely. Now in Daniel chapter 2, we read about this image, and it represents the nations as they come over time, and the head was the head of gold, and the arms of silver was the Medo-Persian Empire, and then the hips of brass were the Greek Empire, and then the legs were the Roman Empire. Now normally when you see that statue, you see them standing there with their legs very tightly together. And I thought perhaps we could modify that a little bit, so I spread the legs around a little bit. And I put one of the feet in Rome and one of the feet in Constantinople. Because what had happened to the Roman Empire? The Roman Empire had split, and the Roman Empire had made a new capital in Constantinople for the civil power, which left a vacuum in Rome, which was filled by the Pontifex Maximus, who took the place of the Caesar and became the spiritual head. So in a sense, what we have here is a spiritual power that yields the spiritual sword, and the secular power which represents the state. And if you go down and you look at the feet, then they consist of iron and clay. Now, what is the iron and the clay? Well, if we read here from this writer, we see, we have come to a time when God's sacred work is represented by the feet of the image in which the iron was mixed with miry clay. God has a people, a chosen people, whose discernment must be sanctified, who must not become unholy by laying upon the foundation wood, hay, and stubble. Every soul who is loyal to the commandments of God will see that the distinguishing feature of our faith is the seventh-day Sabbath, was instituted in Eden. If the government would honor the Sabbath as God has commanded, it would stand in the strength of God and in defense of the faith once delivered to the saints. But statesmen will uphold the spurious Sabbath, which will mingle their religious faith with the observance of this child of the papacy, placing it above the Sabbath which the Lord has sanctified and blessed, setting it apart for man to keep holy as a sign between him and his people to 1,000 generations. The mingling of churchcraft and statecraft is represented represented by the iron and the clay. This union is weakening all the power of the churches. This investing the church with the power of the state will bring evil results. Men have almost passed the point of God's forbearance. They have invested their strength in politics and have united with the papacy. But the time will come when God will punish those who have made void his law, and their evil work will recoil upon themselves. And how will this be achieved? How will the whole world be gathered into this net? At the same time, anarchy is seeking to sweep away all law. Not only divine but human, the centralizing of wealth and power, the vast combinations for the enriching of the few at the expense of the many, the combinations of the poorer classes for the defense of their interests and claims, the spirit of unrest, of riot and bloodshed, and the worldwide dissemination of the same teachings that led to the French Revolution, all are tending to involve the whole world in a struggle similar to that which convulsed France. Okay, so there must be chaos on this planet, and the structure that existed must be overthrown so that a new structure can be set in place. And, well, as the Masonic fraternity says, ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. So the chaos that we are seeing, is it uncontrolled chaos, or is it controlled chaos to bring the minds into a particular channel? Bombing that killed more than 200, deadliest attack in Baghdad in years. Now we can see that the violence strikes across religious divides, because this happened in Muslim countries. And then we go to France. At least 84 killed in France after truck plows through crowds celebrating Bastille Day in suspected terror attack. Bastille Day. What does Bastille Day commemorate? The French Revolution. And what happened in the French Revolution? The goddess of reason replaced normal religion and God, and everybody bowed down to humanism and reason. Now, the commandments of God are based on theocracy, on God's will, but the commandments as modified through Rome and through Babylonian law represents a man-made law which is based on reason and therefore on natural law and not on divine law. So that which led to the French Revolution will again take place at the end, and God again will be removed from the equation and another system put in its place. Then there was the terror attack also in Paris at the nightclub where they're all making the devil's sign, the young people, and the band was playing Kiss the Devil at the Paris terrorist attack. The Eagles of Death metal addresses tragedy for the first time. They came back to re-celebrate the gig, and it seems as if the world is bent on destruction and doesn't take note of the little nuances that we find here. Another interesting factor was the Orlando gay nightclub shooting, 50 killed. Suspect is Omar Martin. Now some claim also that was a false flag. Whether or not is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that to everybody this is a reality, and it is channeling thought processes. What do we have to bring about? We have to bring about such a unity of diversity, and the only way to do that is to create a ring of terror around it so that the ring of terror becomes the common enemy of all these philosophies, so that the philosophies are brought together in unison against the common enemy that might be real or created for the purpose. Whatever, it doesn't matter. The result is what matters. Religious protesters result in Rotting Christ changing their name for the South African gig. Can you imagine a band calling itself Rotting Christ? And they were playing all over the world, bringing a new philosophy of basically occultism and Satanism into the world. And South Africa, still being a relatively conservative country, didn't allow them in with that name. But incredible hypocrisy, when they changed their name, they were allowed in and to do exactly what they did before under another name. So here is this illustrious band with this excellent role model that they are putting out there in the world, a Greek band, and they have a logo which is Kata ton aimona Etoi, which apparently means following one's own demon. Or, as Crowley said, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. Obama defends Black Lives Matter protest at police memorial in Dallas. So here we have a repeat of the issues that led to Martin Luther King's great speeches. And it seems as if people are getting fed up of the violence and the tears and the bloodshed, and they're beginning to say worldwide, let's come together. Let's come together. Now, some things might be good, some things might be less good, and some things may be possibly even be evil in this union. So if you mingle the good with the evil, does the evil become sanctified by the good, or vice versa? Or does it all become a Babylonian confusion? Well, it fell upon former President George W. Bush, a resident of Dallas, to provide a less political message that focused on unifying the country out of grief. Mr. Bush said the nation is proud of its slain officers. And referring to the racial division roiling the country, he said Americans must work at finding our better selves. And then he gave rather a good speech, which I assume came from some other writer's pen. Too often we judge other groups by their worst examples while judging ourselves by our best intentions. Mr. Bush said, at our best, we know we have one country, one future, one destiny. We recognize that we are brothers and sisters sharing the same brief moment on earth. We do not want the unity of grief, nor do we want the unity of fear. We want the unity of hope, affection, and high purpose. Sounds excellent. Excellent. Obama's gay marriage legacy. White House lit up with rainbow after same-sex marriage ruling. Now it's interesting that the rainbow, of course, represents light. And as we saw in a previous lecture, the Bible says God is light. But at one stage, the covering cherub was known as the light bearer. And I'm wondering whose light is shining brightly here with the colors of the rainbow reflecting the spectrum of light. Is it the light from the light bearer, or is it the light from God himself? Now again, I'm not making a value judgment saying whether this is evil or otherwise. All I'm saying is I'm making an observation. Here, for the first time through this ruling, an institution which had been put in place by God was made undone. And therefore the marriage, which was to be between a man and a woman has been broadened to incorporate any philosophy under the sun when it comes to those issues. Of course, we also know that child right in the United Nations stands higher than parental right, and we also know that there has been a reversal when it comes to the man and the woman. Because if you want to be employed in this new world order, the very last one on the list is the male. And it's interesting that very often there's also a racial divide, and that certain ethnic groups also end up at the bottom of this pile when it comes to the distribution of jobs, etc. Now again, I'm not making a value judgment. I'm just making an observation. Everything that was put in place in Eden, has it been reversed by modern legislation, yes or no? So is this a new kingdom, a new covenant that is being set up, or is it a modification of an old one? And can God's covenant be modified, is my question in the first place. Well, the newspapers had a field day comparing presidents with presidents. Kennedy, they have one small step for man, and Obama, one giant leap for mankind, and they have the transvestite coming out of the ladies' washroom. So this is a legacy, this is a change of politics. And some people believe that Obama will go down as one of the greatest presidents of all time, and the magazines and the newspapers have something to say on the issue. This one says, "It may be hard to imagine now, but in the face of rising chaos, we'll crave unity all the more." Isn't this exactly what I've been saying? The chaos creates the unity. And in future years, whoever can speak most convincingly of unity will rise to the top. It's also hard to imagine many beating Obama at the game. This year's carnival election with Trump as a kind of debauched circus barker only makes the distinction clearer. The absurdity and car crash spectacle of it all have already lent Obama an out-of-time quality, as if he were a creature from another loftier century. Whatever happens next, I feel this in my bones. We'll look back at history, hopefully when we're zooming down the Barack Obama Hyperloop transport system, and think, that man was rare, and we were damn lucky to have him. Is it possible that what we are witnessing is a giant charade? Where the one says, let's build up walls and barriers between nations and states. And the Pope addressed this very specifically in his speech when he said, this is not the time to build walls, but to break down barriers. Isn't this a time when it seems as if the one is living in another time zone, and the sensible ones are being gathered into a particular mindset? Now, not everybody might be going along with the mindset, but I certainly feel there's a channeling of minds in a particular direction. Pierre Tyler de Chardin, the Jesuit, if you like, godfather of the United Nations philosophy, says, driven by forces of love, the fragments. Now, in order to be a fragment, you must first be fragmented, right? Of the world seeks each other so that the world may come to being. So first you fragment them, and then you gather them. And how do you gather them? By a ring of fear. Perfect. Perfect. The outcome of the world, the gates of the future, the entry into the superhuman, these are not thrown open to a few of the privileged, nor to one chosen people, to the exclusion of all others. They will open only to an advance of all together in a direction in which all together can join and find completion in a spiritual renovation of the earth. So there must be a new spirituality which incorporates all the philosophies of the earth, whether they exclude Christ or not, and whether they exclude lifestyles contrary to Scripture or not. So these two illustrious people facing off, they look very cheerful at the moment. I'm watching the debate like I would be a spectator, and to see where is this leading the minds of the people. I find it rather fascinating debate. And I was very interested in the displays of Bernie Sanders, who had a very particular philosophy and was pushing a particular agenda and would not relent until the whole party accepted or acceded to that agenda. Now, Bernie Sanders, at one stage, went to the Vatican conference. Sanders said in an interview with Associated Press that he was appreciative and proud to be invited to the conference organized by the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, and that he had long admired the teachings of Pope Francis. He will join several speakers commemorating the 25th anniversary of Centissimus Annus, a high-level teaching document by Pope John Paul II on the economy, social justice at the end of the Cold War. And of course, the philosophy of Rome is totally redistributive and fascist in a sense, because all control will be centralized. The theme from the conference, which is essentially how we create a moral economy, is one that has occupied my attention for decades, and the teaching from Pope Francis have moved me very much. Now, this was his campaign mantra. And only once this had been accepted in party ranks could he endorse the next candidate for the presidency. Bernie Sanders endorses Hillary Clinton. I find it rather fascinating that both the candidates, whether on the Republican side or the Democratic side, have Jesuit trained, if not Jesuit themselves, vice presidents behind the scenes. I find this rather fascinating. Now, what about Brexit? We hear so many voices that, maybe Europe is falling apart. Maybe the iron and clay, the weak nations and the strong nations are falling apart. But as we have seen, the one stands for churchcraft and the other one stands for statecraft. That's why the 2 feet are separated, one into a spiritual empire, the other one into a secular empire. And what is the point of Brexit? The first question I would like to ask is, why did Britain never join the euro in the first place? Did they perhaps know that they were never going to really be part? But to draw everyone in, they joined so that it would appear as if all nations are part and parcel. Is it possible that Britain might have another role apart from the other parts of Europe? Well, let's have a look at Cameron's legacy. We've looked at Obama's legacy. How we will remember him. This is the BBC. David Hassel in Birmingham believes David Cameron will always be remembered first and foremost as the Prime Minister who held a referendum on Britain's membership of the EU. He'll be remembered as the Prime Minister who bet the future of the country on a referendum, the real aim of which was to sort out Eurosceptics within his own party. He lost that bet, and as a result, forced the country out of the EU, possibly leading to the eventual breakup of the UK itself. That's not a legacy to be proud of. Wasn't it surprising how every single one, including the Tories that were against Brexit, put the shoulder to the wheel to make sure that Brexit proceeds as planned? I find this rather interesting. Gay marriage bill. Johnny Thompson in Cardiff believes David Cameron should be praised for introducing gay marriage. As a member of the LGBT community, I'll always remember David Cameron as the Prime Minister who finally introduced gay marriage into the United Kingdom. His social policies in modernizing the Conservative Party and protecting vulnerable minority groups such as my own is a feature of his premiership which I hope is not forgotten. Mr. Cameron essentially made me proud, not only to be British, but proud to be myself. That is invaluable. He legalized gay marriage, but it wasn't even in the Tory manifesto, and against the wishes of many of his own MPs. And it's not only Great Britain, but this is spreading like wildfire. All the nations are accepting it. In South Africa, there's even a new addition to this already existing legislation that there will be no third-party lawsuits allowed anymore. In the old days, if somebody broke up a marriage, then there was recourse to sue the person for losses that were incurred. No longer, because marriage is just a handshake. It's no longer a covenant, and you are free to go for anyone that you want to, and therefore there's no breach of any moral code if someone takes the wife that does not belong to him. Fascinating how the world has changed. Now, who runs the world? Women. Now again, please don't misunderstand me before you want to stone me. I'm not making a value judgment. And I'm not saying that a woman is incapable of running it. I'm just saying that the hierarchy that was put in place in Eden has been absolutely turned upside down. If I look at some of the men today, they thoroughly deserve the women to rule because they have lost their backbone. They're more like jellyfish. But nevertheless, it's very fascinating that women seem to rule. And I gather that the Dalai Lama many years ago already said that the world will be ruled by a Western woman. I wonder who that could be. As Theresa May became Britain's Prime Minister Wednesday, the world is one step closer to being run by women. May joins German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who leads Europe's largest economy and has worked to unify the continent in the face of a multitude of recent global crises. As a woman governing a major European country, and if Hillary Clinton is elected president in November, 3 of the world's most influential nations would be run by women for the first time. All together now. 1, 2, 3. Now, I'm fascinated with this number 3, and with Brexit in particular. Isaiah chapter 3, verse 12, as for my people, children are their oppressors. And that has happened because child law has been placed above parental law in the United Nations, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee, cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. Now, I'm not saying here, and I don't think the text is saying, is that the women are causing everyone to err. I think that those who control the real seat of power behind the scenes are causing everyone to err. And as the Jesuits of Georgetown have already said, the world is ruled by an illustrious small group of which some of them are members. So I assume that behind the scenes the Jesuits are pulling the strings to undo every single aspect of God's government. May Day, time for amendment of life. It's interesting that the Jesuits in Britain were exceedingly pleased when that deal was signed in France and the nations subjected their power unto a universal authority. Now, Theresa May and Angela Merkel have a few things in common. And this is one of the things that she said, or that the newspapers say. Christians may in particular think that Theresa May's family background, she is the daughter of a vicar, will have given her a true understanding of what it is to serve. Church of England incumbents make a huge contribution to the well-being of everyone who lives in their parishes. Not just those who attend church or profess the Christian faith. This is the real work of Christ. And it is this that Theresa May grew up witnessing day after day. Theresa May has also set out her vision of reform, the success of which depends on the workings of an authoritative parliament that truly represents and serves the people. It is not entirely originally. She is repeating the substance of one of the greatest party chairmen said to a conservative conference as the party and government set out to find a new agenda after de Gaulle vetoed Britain's application to join the European community. Theresa May echoed MacLeod when she said, "In Britain today, if you're born poor, you will die on average 9 years earlier than others. If you're black, you're treated more harshly by the criminal justice system than when you're white. If you're white, working class boy, you're less likely than anyone else to go to university. If you're at the state school, you're less likely to reach the top profession than if you were educated privately. If you're a woman, you still earn less than a man. If you suffer from mental health problems, there's too often not enough help at hand. If you're young, you'll find it harder than ever before to own your own home. These are all burning injustices, and I'm determined to fight against them." There are, of course, many things that Theresa May has said and done with which Christians can disagree, but no Christian can disagree with this agenda. It's interesting. So the party is displaying a kinder face, a softer face, a more Christian human face. Is this perhaps designed to draw people into a particular mindset of kindness and tolerance towards all situations? After all, when you look at Angela Merkel, she's the one who said, "Let the refugees come. Let them come. We have a motherly duty to take care of all of these issues." Again, I'm not making a value judgment. I'm just making an observation. Money is the only god, this is the guardian, the Tories want us to worship on a Sunday. Now, what is this debate all about? You see, the Tories had a history of being the ones who were capitalistically inclined. But now they're having a softer face. And this man laments the Tory situation and Sunday. So why is Sunday special? It comes from the Guardian, in the midst of all this debate. The Christian answer is more complicated than expected. Early Christians moved their day of rest from the seventh day of the week to the first day, from Saturday to Sunday. Despite the fourth commandment mandating Saturday, i.e. seventh day Sabbath observance, this move was partly a way of honoring the resurrection, which happened on the first day of the week, partly about distinguishing Christianity from Judaism, and partly a way of colonizing the posh Roman sun-worshipping day. Quite accurate, as a matter of fact. But it also conveniently distanced Christianity and its new imperial friends from all that dangerously redistributive stuff about the Jubilee. What is being placed in the minds of the people here? to which the Sabbath is fundamentally connected. For the seventh day of the week corresponded to the seventh day of creation, and God rested. From this derives rest on the seventh day, rest for the land on the seventh year, which on the Jewish calendar is this year, and the forgiveness of all debts, the Jubilee on the seventh year. Do they want redistribution of wealth and all of these issues, and a Jubilee, a new beginning, a total change? This last is the big one, the so-called year of the Lord's favor. It's what the Jubilee debt campaign referred back to when it called for the eradication of developing world debt. It's also what Jesus refers to in his first ever sermon, "I come to bring good news to the poor, freedom to the captives, and proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." This is not some niche bit of scripture. It's the key that unlocks the whole meaning of the Jesus movement, and it is fundamentally and unavoidably unethical to modern capitalism. So the Tories are shifting one way. The mindset in the United States is being shifted in the same way. I find this interesting. And who backs it? The Pope in Rome. Are we going to experience perhaps a financial crash, as so many claim? I don't know what the procedure is. I'm just watching the mindset. The mechanism will be clear sooner or later. And it's fundamentally and unavoidably unethical to modern capitalism. The Jubilee is not debt restructuring, it's out and out full-on debt forgiveness. No wonder the business minister isn't so keen. Will there come a new world order with Sunday being pivotal in the equation, yes or no? I think it will. Now, why would these three be treated so differently? Let's look at the United States, let's look at Great Britain, and let's look at Rome. Did you know that Washington, D.C., the City of London, and the Vatican are sovereign states? Totally independent sovereign states, over and above the rest of the nations. All three cities have an obelisk. The City of London has the so-called Cleopatra's Needle. The Washington Monument and the Vatican Square have an obelisk. This is, of course, the symbol of Nimrod, the symbol of sun worship. And all three of these are independent sovereign nations. And these three will form the core and the heart of the New World Order, with the spiritual kingdom centered in Rome, the political military kingdom centered in Washington, and the economic kingdom centered in London. Let's have a look at it. This is the Vatican. It's an independent sovereign state within the bounds of the city of Rome, and it has its own king, it has its own flag, and it has its own territory and political system. It's an independent sovereign nation, the spiritual head of the world. When we go to the City of London, there you have the business sector, which is an independent sovereign nation within Britain, not belonging to Britain at all. And don't be deceived when we talk about the crown, because the crown does not belong to Britain. The crown was seceded to Rome, and that is a historic event. The papacy put the crown back onto the King of England's head, subject to his subserviency to Rome. So it's a fiefdom. So don't be confused about the crown. The crown is Rome. So this independent sovereign state within the City of London has its own coat of arms and its own flag. And it has its own structure and its own voting system, and it's totally independent of the rest of London. Let's have a look at the history. Like Vatican City, this is the Corporation of London, it's called. Like Vatican City, London's financial district is also a privately owned corporation or city-state located right smack in the heart of Greater London. It became a sovereign state in 1694 when King William III of Orange privatized and turned the Bank of England over to the bankers. Now, who were the bankers? They were the Rothschilds. What does Rothschild mean? It means Rothschild. What is Rothschild? Red shield. And red shield was the shield that the Roman army used to wear. And when you look up the House of Rothschild in the Jewish encyclopedia, they will tell you Vatican bankers. So they are the bankers of the Vatican, and they are as little Jewish as they intend to be. There's someone else behind them. So let's look at what Wikipedia has to say. The City of London Corporation, officially and legally the mayor and commonalty and citizens of the City of London, is the municipal governing body of the City of London, the historic centre of London and the location of much of the UK's financial sector. In 2006, the name was changed from Corporation of London to avoid confusion with the wider London local government, the Greater London Authority. It's totally independent. It's a sovereign state. The corporation is probably the world's oldest continuously elected local government authority. Both business and residents of the city or square mile are entitled to vote in elections, in addition to its function as the local authority, analogous to those undertaken by the boroughs that administer the rest of London. It takes responsibilities for supporting financial service industry, representing its interests. The corporation's structure includes the Lord Mayor, the Court of Aldermen, the Court of Common Council, and the freemen and livery of the city. Totally independent. It is the economic hub, and it belongs to the Crown, it belongs to the Vatican. It is the hub of the international economic system. Now, the Lord Mayor, who happened to be a Tory, was Boris Johnson. And he was vehemently pro-Brexit, supposedly, against David Cameron. And he was widely touted to be the next Prime Minister, which of course he did not become. Theresa May became the Prime Minister because there must be a reversal of structure, and a softer face, a kinder face, must be represented to the world. There's something motherly about it. I mean, even Rome uses the mother figure to soften the sentiments and chase the people to Mary rather than to Jesus. But after Brexit, what did he become? He was made the Foreign Secretary. Now, the Foreign Secretary is the one who deals with whom? With all the other nations. This is the new power structure that is being set in place. And Britain cannot be part of the other nations of Europe. You cannot be part of a system if you are above the system. You either rule the system, or you are part of the system, or you are subservient to the system. Rome cannot be part of the Greater Rome because it rules the Greater Rome. It has to be separate. And the same with the political center and heart of the New World Government cannot be subject to another authority. It is the authority. So the three are actually the New World Order's ruling power of the religious, economic, and political powers of the world, all run by the sword of the Spirit, to which the sword of the state is subject. And this is why the legs were separated into secular and spiritual powers. And the toes and the feet are secular and spiritual powers. Now, it's also fascinating to me that he was replaced by Khan, who became the new mayor of London, and he is a Muslim. Now, again, I'm not making a value judgment. I'm just making an observation. Do you find it interesting that we have this religious inclusivity? Because the world must be led in a direction that whether you belong to one religion or another religion should not be a factor anymore. After all, the leadership in Great Britain, wasn't it subject to Protestantism? But now we have a whole new dimension. This is a new world order. This is something else that has come into play. Now, there are interesting rumors that have emerged, and I've spoken about these rumors and this possibility years and years ago. And whether it be Prince Charles, who becomes the figurehead of the New World Order or not, his image is somewhat tainted, and what does it matter anyway? He is a sovereign in his own right as the Prince of Wales. He has his own coat of arms. He has his own throne. So why not bypass him with a new public figure to set a beautiful image of unity and peace and kindness into the world? Rumours have emerged. Britain's Queen Elizabeth is set to retire and intends to pass the crown over to Prince William and Kate Middleton. Britain's Queen Elizabeth, who just celebrated her 63rd year on the throne, making her the longest reigning monarch in the UK, is reportedly retiring and giving up the throne in favour of her grandson, Prince William, bypassing her eldest son and heir apparent, Prince Charles. Whether or not, I don't know, it's just speculation. The news came from reports that the Queen had made it known she was planning to step down and skip over her son, Prince Charles, turning over the crown to the second in line to the throne, his son, Prince William. While according to the order of succession to the British throne, Prince Charles may come to the throne of his mother, Queen Elizabeth abdicates, retires or passes away. The Queen cannot automatically pass the crown over to her grandson, Prince William, unless she compels Prince Charles to abdicate in favour of her son. Based on emerging rumours, that is exactly what Queen Elizabeth is planning to do. Does it matter whether it is the one or the other? Aren't they both liege men? Aren't they both members of the Order of the Garter, and as such, subject to Rome? They make a handsome couple, don't they? A fine figure for the New World Order. And behind the scenes, who controls? Well, let's go to Washington, where you have the District of Columbia, which within the heart of Washington was Jesuit land. And the whole of the seat of the government was in Maryland and was ceded to the government by the Jesuits, and it belongs to the Jesuits. And this is, of course, also a sovereign nation within the nation with its own flag and its own structures, just as the City of London. Here is the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and it has some interesting things to say. It says, "There's no argument or question that our country was founded on Christian values that have eroded over the years." A Post-Gazette article is illustrative. "Church fading away after more than a century of worship," the subhead said. "The First Presbyterian Church in struggling Clayton will close on December the 27th. Another article about the merit of religion appeared on 20th December. Forum section, "Religion is good for families and kids. Our Congress should revisit, and our candidates for president should consider advocating the restoration of Sunday as a day of rest. A paid day of rest, a required day of rest. Now we have the distraction of unnecessary shopping. In the not too distant past, non-essential business established were required to be closed on Sunday." I find it interesting that in the midst of all these debates, in Britain you have the Sunday agitation, in Washington you have the Sunday agitation, in the whole of Europe you have the Sunday agitation, and the Pope is asking for Sunday legislation. All of it coming together. Is the government of God to be totally reversed and set aside, and the whole Edenic covenant pushed away in favor of this inclusive new system incorporating truth? Well, I don't think there's one iota of truth. Error couched as truth. Americans deserve a day of rest, a day to be with families, attend church and interact with people on an interpersonal level. Imagine shutting down the internet or cell phones for a day, how peaceful that day would be. We have made a truly negative rat race with limited time available for potential for good interactions with one another. We need to restore one takeaway from our past. Sunday as a day of rest, a day of worship, of prayer that was invaluable to our family values and individual well-being. The odds are, regretfully, that our Sunday traditions of the past are gone forever, just as are the odds that presidential candidates would even think of Sunday as an essential need. Merry Christmas. Well, that was just a while ago. And then I find it fascinating that this move to gather all the religions, and particularly the Christian religions in this nation together, is spearheaded by the papacy. Together, 2016 aims to unify 1 million Christians in prayer on National Mall. Why the National Mall? Is it because that is a sovereign independent state within the United States? And this must be arranged with the rulers of that sovereign independent state, which happens to be the Jesuits? What does it say? What were they going to do on that day? It's happened by now. Pope Francis held up a black t-shirt adorned with an American flag last week on YouTube and urged young people to journey to Washington, D.C. this month. Wear this t-shirt in unison and respond to the great restlessness. I invite you to a great gathering. Jesus is waiting for you. And then they will have this great gathering. Nick Hall, the founder of the movement, hopes to unite peoples of all kinds. Jesus welcomes you whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent. He welcomes you whether you are young, old. Jesus is an equal opportunity employer, said Mr. Hall, an evangelical preacher who lives in Minneapolis. Dozens of major Christian musicians and speakers from many denominations will perform on stage near the Washington Monument. Among them, then there's a whole list of them. If we're singing the same song together, then we can't yell at each other, said Matt Mayer, Catholic musician and 8-time Grammy Award winner. Together is a modern-day evangelical revival complete with TED Talks, hip-hop, and no politics. Well, the agenda seems to be working. The mindset is being gathered. But I think God still has a finger in the pie, and I think God has a sense of humor, because when they gathered, there was such a heat wave that they had to stop it early because some people were beginning to become faint. This week, thousands of evangelical Christians will gather near the Washington Monument for what organizers hope to will be a historic religious revival. Together. That has a heavy social media branding, major music, hip-hop, folktronica, hard rock, popular evangelists. It sounds to me like all kinds of music. And I read that somewhere in Daniel, where when they bowed down to this new image, it was done with all kinds of music so that the mind couldn't concentrate on the facts, but merely on the euphoria. I think the humanity is being brainwashed into a thinking pattern. Hall said his goal is just to hold a huge Love Jesus rally, something that has been mostly absent from American public life since the day of Billy Graham. Everything now is protests. I am against this, or I hate that. We really believe that there's a longing to come together. We don't have to agree on everything, but we can come together around the hope of Jesus. He said there are moments when God's people come together and God does something that can heal, change, define generations. Come together, whether it be truth or whether it be error. Is it really so? It's marketed as a huge day of Christian unity, a time when we will lay down what divides us. Politics. Did we hear the Pope use that in his speech? Well, as a metaphor, but nevertheless, did he do it? Yes. Race. Did he do that? Yes. Social issues. Did he do that? Yes. Theological differences. Did he do that? Yes. Is this an agenda or is it an agenda? We see the pattern. We see the pattern. Although the lineup is entirely evangelical, excepting for a greeting from Pope Francis, some prominent evangelical leaders said the racial and gender diversity of the people who will be on the stage is groundbreaking. Fascinating. Around half will be non-white and perhaps a third will be female. Revelation 17 verse 12 says, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind." I find this very interesting. One mind. One mindset. One mindset. "And shall give their power and strength unto the beast." Can you see the papacy coming out of the Capitol? Not going out of the doors where the normal presidents go, but onto the balcony as he does in the Vatican to receive the homage of the people, and how his philosophy and his agenda is being planted in the minds of men, and God's government is being destroyed before our very eyes, and we think it is a marvelous thing that is happening. And a choice is being made between the government of God and the government of man, the commandments of God and the commandments of man. Who do we serve? This is a choice we all have to make. And the Bible says they have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast, and then they will make war with the Lamb. These are Christian nations, and they will make war with the Lamb. How do you make war with the Lamb? Do you blast a nuclear weapon? Or do you attack God's people? Those who say, "I refuse to go along with this. I stand by the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus." And the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Babylon also had 3 components. There was a dragon, a beast, and a false prophet. And the political rulership system has 3 components. And they're all singing in happy unison right now. All together now. 1, 2, 3. And then the end shall come. Amen.